For this walk we've come over to Swindale, which is in the far eastern region of the Lake District and a couple of miles south of the village of Bampton. And the intention today is to go and cover two of Wainwright's outlying fells. That's Nabs Moor and Howes. And they lie at the top end, or should I say the far end of Swindale, which is to the south from here. It's a brilliant day. Blue sky, total blue sky, no clouds at all. So it looks like we're in for a good walk. On leaving the car park, we're going to walk along Swindale Lane. We'll do that until we get to Dod Bottom, from where we'll take a ridge that goes up to Nabs Moor, across to a secondary summit to Howes, and then we'll head down towards Mosedale via the quarry to the Bothy, before heading along Mosedale, down past Falls, and back along on the eastern side of Swindale Beck. That'll bring us back to the start. Well, the signage is actually quite self-explanatory. The road along here is very narrow and there's very few passing places and even fewer parking places. So it's best just to park in the car park and enjoy the walk to the head of the valley. Over the wall on your left you'll see a metal and concrete construction, and it's a dam in Swindale Beck. It was replaced in 2016. Part of its job is to divert water from this beck into Haweswater Reservoir. But some of the water carries on its journey to join the River Eden. Once you pass Truss Gap Farm, you'll get to this sign saying "Welcome to Swindale." And there is a path that goes down to the left through the fields. But we're going to stick to the track that carries on to the head of the dale. Once you reach the end of the tarmac road, you carry on along the lane through a gate, ignore the sign for Mardale, but continue along the public right-of-way that's signposted for Mosedale. We're now at the top of Swindale and it's a wonderful view, and we're standing on one of the drumlins which dot this whole landscape hereabouts, left over from the last ice age and the glaciers. Over there we've got Forced Falls looking in full flow today, as are the falls in Hobgrumble Gill. But it's an impressive place, very quiet and beautiful on a day like today. I've seen two other people so far, both on bikes, but what we can hear are the red deer, the stags rutting on the fell side over to our right. If we're lucky, we might get to see them closer at hand later on. but I think this is a good place to stop and have something to eat. On days like today, I'm usually in no hurry, so if I can, I'll take some time to do a bit of sketching. The pony track now crosses this beck, and you can see it heading up towards the left. But we're not going to take that route, we're going to stick to this right hand bank and head directly up towards the crag. I must be getting old, because that was a steep old pull up from the gill. But here we are at the summit of Nabs Moor. And that's all you get for your money. A single stone acting as a cairn. Nice one it is though, covered with lichen and weathered in. Don't suppose many people come here. But it's an impressive view. Back down into Swindell and right over to the North Pennines. Great Dun fell away in the distance. Grand. When I was having a look in the Outlying Fells book, doing my research for the 365, I noticed that Wainwright calls this Nabs Moor, and rightly so, because on his maps at the time that he was writing the Outlying Fells book, the name Nabs Moor was over the map, just about here, very close to Nabs Crag, which is the drop just behind us. But nowadays, if you look at the Ordnance Survey maps, more recently the name Nabs Moor has been moved further and further back towards Howes, so it sits right in the middle between this top and the far top. So I suppose you could call this Nabs Crag, but Wainwright called it Nabs Moor, and Nabs Moor it is. So it looks like we've got the hard work done, and we've got to head over in that direction now towards Howes. Instead of heading directly up to Howes, which you can see in front of us, I'm going to take a slight detour over to the left to this outcrop where there's a good path and it leads to the top. And I believe at the top is a small cairn. Now we're going there just purely out of interest, for no other reason, and then we'll head over to Howes. What a delightful little top. About the size of a tennis court, fairly flat, with a tumble down cairn on the top, so it's obviously had some meaning in the past. Great views all round. Tarn Crag, in fact there's Harrop Pike as well, and Howes round to Salsett Pike, and it definitely sticks out from the rest of the terrain. And surprisingly, it's not named, and I don't think I've seen it on any tick list or anything, but it's definitely worthy of it. Just shows how fickle these lists can be, but I'm glad I've come. So let's head on up to Howes and keep going. And this will be Wainwright's unexpected tarn, and it's a nice one. Just sat on this shelf before it drops down into Mosedale, with Howes Summit up on the right. Lovely. Oh dear baby, getting old, getting old. I know. Oh, we'll have something. And this is the summit of Howes. It's not the most exciting of tops, but it's still a damn fine view. I can still see those deer. They're just up here to the right, a couple of 100 yards away. But then directly to my front, behind the camera, is Harrop Pike. I can see the tall cairn on there, and away over there in the gap is Ingleborough, the Howgill Fells over to this way, Wild Boar Fell, and then the North Pennines with Great Dun Fell up over there. In fact, I could, if it wasn't so far behind the hill, I could probably see home from here. But not a bad place to be. I like coming and doing the Outlying Fells because they're places mostly that I've never been to before, and even though they're not very exciting, they just give you a different aspect to the Lakeland Fells, and certainly not crowded. Once I've had this and taken it in, I'll head down into Mosedale now. We'll go to the quarry and then we'll go to the Bothy before heading back down to the falls. We're now heading over to Mosedale Quarry. There's not much of a path, but it's easy to head in the right direction. The quarry's obviously disused, but there's loads of workings here, old huts, buildings and lots of spoil. And it's only from the air do you get a real impression of how big this whole place would have been. After we'd had a look round the quarry, we headed down towards the Bothy. I love looking at these old piles of slate and the dry stone walls, now covered by some lovely lime green lichen. And this is Mosedale Bothy. At one time it used to be a shepherd's hut, but now it's maintained by the Mountain Bothies Association. Certainly a remote location, and it's in very good order. So let's head back. We'll just carry on down the track that takes us back towards Swindell. Well, that was a bit of a trudge. It's a very wet and boggy path, that, but it's done. We're just at a point now where the path splits, and we would like to head right down here, which will take us to the waterfalls. and they're the best part of the walk, so it would be a shame to miss them, and certainly in this light we won't get any good photographs or film. But I've got an idea. Bit more light about now. Anyway, just to recap, so we've walked along the track that comes from Mosedale Cottage, and we're now going to head down to Force Falls. At this point, just after the gate, the Ordnance Survey footpath shows that it goes just to the left of the wall. But there is a good path here to the right, which is the one that Wainwright shows in the Outlying Fells book, and that will lead us down to Force Falls, so that's the way we're going to go. After a couple of 100 yards, you'll come to a fork in the path. The one to the left that Bailey's on will take us back down to Swindell, but we want to keep to the right, and that'll lead us towards the waterfalls. There's another bit of tumble down wall here, down to our right, but up to the left are two shelters. But actually I don't think they are shelters, they look more like grouse butts to me. They're well out of use now, but they're shaped in that fashion and spaced apart. But there's no grouse up here now, and definitely no grouse shooting. There's actually a whole series of waterfalls here in this ravine, and this is probably the most spectacular, and yet you don't see many photographs of it. It's probably because it's quite a long walk in and it's quite a difficult place to get to. It takes a bit of effort, but if this was near a more popular location in the Lake District, you'd see photographs of this all the time. It's a beauty. There are other good cascades here in this ravine, like that one at the top of the picture. But as impressive as it is, it's very difficult to get to. So if you do come up this way looking for good photographs, then do remember, put safety first. Now we just carry on along this path, well above the ravine, and we'll get a view of Swindell. That's not bad, is it? And Southside Pike over there. And Nabs Moor, where we were earlier. The path of descent from here is not bad. It's quite dry, but do take care because it drops quite steeply down into the valley floor. Oh, and if you think you've seen the last of the waterfalls, you haven't. There's plenty more. On this route, we're going to take a different way back to the start. Instead of walking along the lane back to the car, we're going to head down to this footbridge, cross it, and then take up the path, which isn't marked on the OS map, which will lead us back on this side of the valley, back to the car. This bridge is fairly new. It's not marked on the Ordnance Survey map, so it's definitely not in the Outlying Fells book. And I would imagine it was put in place in 2016 when they were doing work in the valley, the RSPB and United Utilities. But we're using it because we're going to cross over here and follow the RSPB Valley Walk route, which is marked with blue arrows. It will give us a different view of the Dale because we'll be travelling to the east side of Swindale Beck. It's a good path along here, but obviously not very well used. Up to our right, I could see that there was a herd of red deer. They were just stood watching us for ages. Lovely to see, and they were actually very close. Well, this path was a good find. It gives a totally different aspect to Swindell, with Nabs Moor at the head of the valley. Yeah, it's a bit boggy in places, but you stick fairly close to the wall. You can see it's got this deer fence on it to stop the deer jumping over and eating all the freshly planted trees. But I like it. We just have to follow it on. From this vantage point you can now see where Swindale Beck meanders gently through the Dale. Prior to 2016 this was a straight run of water through the valley, which increased farmland. But then RSPB and United Utilities, as well as some other agencies, reformed the river so it meandered in a more natural effect, increasing the landscape and the environment for wildlife. We're now crossing over Crag Gill. It's a delightful gill, surrounded by deciduous trees. And on the right you can see the big boulders which would have been at one time washed out from the gill, probably in a really heavy storm. Once you're about equal with Trustgap Farm, you'll see the filter house and the footbridge in front of you, and that's where we're heading. There are stepping stones. Bailey's quite keen, but I can see at the far end there's a couple missing. So I don't fancy getting my feet wet. We'll just go downstream a bit and cross by the new footbridge. There was an old footbridge here, but this is all part of the rejuvenation of Swindell, and this one actually has a fish pass, but no fishes today. And here we are back on the road. Top end of Swindale that way, and the car is that way. So that's the way we're going. And here we are nearly back at the start at Journey's End. After a great walk. Shame I had to split it into two days, but I think it was worth it. And the weather's held off. So back to the car and back to the studio.